I really must do more sit-ups.
Well, on that note, welcome to all of our merry Marvelites out there for a very special Marvel movie talk. I am, as always, Christian Blatt. Michael Shirley will be joining us in a little bit. But once again, with the privilege and the honor to talk to the great Chris Claremont, who, of course, is, I always feel like the easy thing to do is the guy who wrote X-Men for 17 years, but because I feel like if I start giving more credits, then it'll just be time to say goodbye afterwards, So it's what obviously what you're most identified with is the X-Men, but I think that's look, there's worse ways to be introduced. So Chris, thank you for coming back on the show. It's always a thrill.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm suddenly realizing, looking at the screen, that there's a little blue dot in the center of the top of my computer, which, the camera.
The camera.
I'm looking down. So as I look down and focus on the screen, it makes my normally hard to see eyeballs invisible. So I'm just sleeping.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, look, the old writer guy is just falling asleep on screen. What the heck is that?
Well, and people may have noticed when you put your other hand up, if someone follows you on Instagram, which I always recommend people do, Chris Claremont, you had a fall, you had a little injury lately, and
let us go back a couple of weeks. You can actually see what it looked like. It was like swollen up, like it was disgusting.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, gravity and me had an encounter, and guess who lost?
I guess it was you. Well, there's a lot of new stuff to talk about. The last time I talked to you, there's stuff was in the pipeline, but I think it was July, so we weren't really able to go into it.
You mean back in the day when we thought this stupid year would only last another week or two? How can anything go on as long as this?
Yeah, right.
I'm not talking politics.
No. But it's I think in July we're like, all right, by the fall things will be all right. Although you're in the short list of people that I know you actually did a con appearance. I think over the summer, right? You went to Alabama.
We just the con promoter, the manager, kept expecting them to call and say we're canceling the event. The venue was canceling the event. And they never did. And I kept waiting for him to call me and say, I'm canceling the event because everybody else has. And he never did. So, yep, it was fun, actually. I had the distinction of flying in to Alabama. Huntsville, by the way, is great, especially if you're into Saturn V's, which I am. Just as the disease decided to re-peak in Florida and Alabama. Fortunately, I'd already had my encounter with Covis and come out the other end in one piece, so I was lucky. But it was fun.
Oh yeah, I didn't realize that it was something that you'd run into, and I've known a few people that have had it, varying degrees, and it's usually it to me it's never the people. Oh yeah, we had 50 people over for Thanksgiving. It's always like, I don't know how I got it. All I ever do is go to the grocery store. I mean, the friends that I have who have it's all just like, I don't know what happened.
Well, it's one of those weird things. Here I am talking out of school. So eldest son was at RPI.
Okay, sure.
Rensselaer Polytechnic. And he's in an engineering class. And one of his classmates, this is back in January, when they'd all gone back for spring semester.
Sure.
And the classmate, they were working on a project, and the classmate would just be standing right next to him, coughing like he's got this incredible bug in his throat. And suddenly one day he vanished, and it turned out he'd gone home to where he lived in China, Wuhan.
Wow. So,
And no, the flip side was youngest son is matriculating, was matriculating at St Andrews in Scotland. So he comes home for spring break, like a month later, and everybody has to get tested before they go through U.S. Customs in Dublin.
right.
So what do? You know how when you went to the airport, you stood on this S-curve line that was about 200 people long, and it took you 2 hours to get through the queue?
Yes, of
And
course.
that's the normal. That's when it's normal. He was
Yeah.
on the queue for like 4 hours, so much so that they had to reschedule the plane to accommodate the fact that all the passengers were still stuck in line. But everyone's standing nose to tail.
Right.
You know, I'm sure there was no passage of disease. You were only coming from the UK, which was already hot, chock full of it. So we had lots of vectors floating around. And fortunately, we all got lucky. I mean, we got sick.
Sure.
But we came out the other end in one piece.
Right. And with us now is our regular co-host, Michael Shirley, with what I believe is I don't know what hair. I don't know what I don't know what you want to call it, Michael, but to me that is a wig that I would like to call the Betsy Braddock. You can call it whatever you like, but to me that's
Betsy Braddock's not bad.
Oh man, it just came out of a box.
Yeah, but I feel
you
like
see what's under here, man.
But hey, come on, it's we could all be so lucky. So
I can't pull a Nancy Pelosi.
Well, yeah, well,
you mean stand there expressionless?
I guess he could do that. No, I think I don't know, Michael. I know we don't talk a lot about where you live, but I'm pretty sure you could get your haircut out there. So, see now it's the perfect look. In any case,
how very oh, for God's sake, Jane Fonda, 1971.
Yeah, right. The Hanoi Jane era of Jane Fonda, of course. So, Michael, there's so much to talk to Chris about, and we went down a little bit of a COVID wormhole, which unfortunately that's what 2020 has essentially been. But on the way in 2021, there is some exciting stuff to look at, and one of the things that I want to talk about is the Uncanny X-Men 140.5. And I do love that this cover that I believe this is Salvador.
Yep.
And yeah, and I think that I love that it's got the old sort of, the positioning of the Marvel Comics group. It's got the diamond, and best of all, 50 cents. But if for people to read this story, they'll have to do what I did and pre-order they'll have to have already pre-ordered the Paragon collection, and this is included, and it cost a little bit more than 50 cents, but well worth it. What can you tell us about this story that we'll get to see, I guess, in the early spring?
Well, I will happily identify who's in the foreground. We have Bishop, we have Nightcrawler, we have Sage, and we have Bloody Bess, who's Nightcrawler's other true love.
Nightcrawler's other true love. Okay.
Yeah. And the other person on the cover shall remain nameless. You have to read the book.
Ooh.
Right. And what I like is that we see, obviously it's an homage to let's see, that's 141, the one with the wanted posters behind them, and it's updated to include characters who obviously had not been created when we had the original Days of Future Past, because I see Gambit on there.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I see Liana. So it's I think that's her. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I'm just trying to think. Nope, she hadn't been.
She was still a kid at that point. She wasn't a teenager yet. Yeah.
But I will also point out there is one more character clue as to who's in this book in the bottom right corner. And if readers can't recognize who that is from the coloring and
Phoenix
the design,
to me.
Well, I'm not sure she's allowed to be called that anymore.
Okay.
Well, actually, what the hell is
or whatever.
Well, you can
side story. So,
yeah.
This is sort of her pre-celestial existence.
Right, but I guess that those spikes indicate the hound look. So that could be Rachel, who is one of several people that have gone by Phoenix.
There's only one.
There's only one Phoenix.
You're talking my reality here.
That's true.
This was it. The cover with like 53 phoenixes, got people transformed into Phoenix on it. I'm looking at it and thinking, what is this? Like a queue for the F train?
What is that comic?
What?
What is that comic with?
I think
it's online somewhere. It's some new thing coming out from Marvel in the near foreseeable future.
Yeah,
I have no idea exactly what it is other than the title, since I have very little opportunity to read new stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, your character is Phoenix. I wonder if these other ones should be named, perhaps, Tucson, Yuma. They should just use other cities in Arizona because we don't want to get confused. I think that's.
Oh, you can go over the line to New Mexico. Hey, I'm
Cuckoo, Arizona.
No, I mean I have a very specific, sadly, at least for me anyway, well-developed vision of how the X future looks.
Yeah.
Was it apparently that it went up online that Disney or Marvel feel that calling them X-Men is
don't even
not woke anymore?
Don't.
I kind of,
women have the word men in it.
What?
Well,
the word women has the word men in it.
Yeah, but it doesn't iterate. For me, I've gotten to the point where I just call them the X.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, especially in the late 80s, it seemed like at one point the book was a collection of X women and Logan. I mean, I know that's simplifying it a little bit, but I don't
think either side of the equation was bothered by that.
Yeah.
And there was that sexy little one shot called X Women I've got in my collection.
Oh wait, is that
got
mine?
Psylocke. You're like, is that mine?
Well, because I did the gallery size book with Milo Manara.
They're in like the jungle, and I know Storm and Psylocke.
I was like, as soon as you said jungle, I'm like, oh, I remember this. Yes.
Yeah. Well, but Milo Manara draws the, how to put this tactfully, sexiest people, because he draws pretty impressive men in the business. And I mean, the basic difference between his normal stuff and this is that in the X book, everybody had to wear clothes. I mean, he pushed the envelope about as far as you could get away with, but they were just it was the most delightful 48 pages I've had the joy of writing in a long time. And the interesting thing was that he not only got everybody right, but Psylocke looked really Asian, which is a very rare thing.
Yeah.
Most artists weren't comfortable drawing her as an Asian character. So go figure.
Yeah, I mean that's it's always something that is very interesting to me is the evolution of her character. I think that when she first started showing up regularly in X-Men, I don't know how recently she'd been blinded in the Captain Britain title. I mean, she was definitely, I don't know. I mean, she was a shell of her former self. I mean, it seems like one of those things that obviously another creator did that. You seem to have been able to find, I mean, it's similarly, I talked to you about Carol Danvers in a similar fashion that, she gravitated over towards X-Men to become binary at a point where, she had kind of been discarded from Avengers. But what were you going to say about Betsy?
Well, I mean, I created her in the first place, going back to the beginning of Captain Britain.
Right.
In the dawn of time. Trust me, it was in the dawn of time. We were doing it for the UK Weekly. And so a lot of the evolution of her character came under Alan Moore when he was working with Alan Davis, which, talk about a binary, two magnificent talents merging together.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after that run finished, Alan Davis was working with, I'll have to go back and look it up, but he was working with two friends, and they did a sequel. They did a series, a Captain Britain series, to close out the run, I guess, wherein Bess became Captain Britain. And that then went up against an adversary who ripped out her eyes to teach her a lesson. And so that's when I picked up, I figured, the heck with it. She's got purple hair. She's my character. I'm grabbing her. And that's when I brought her in to the X-Men annual with Mojo. And just had, from that point on, we were off and running.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Well, I was wondering sort of, because she looks the way she did classically, there's a visual burned into my head. I believe it's Uncanny 213. She and Sabretooth are both on the cover. That's an Alan Davis. It's a great cover. Talk a little bit about the, just from your point of view, the evolution to when she becomes the Asian version of Psylocke, which it's like, well, it looks really cool, but obviously it has to work from a story point instead of just, oh, it looks cool,
Well, that's the rule of unanticipated consequences. Well, we brought her in. She, in that first story, she's very much Mojo's agent. I mean, he gives her sight back, but what they really are, her eyeballs are really cameras that allow him to get live footage from our dimension and put him up on his video, which of course makes him richer and more famous and more dominant in his own realm. Because, he's basically a madcap cinema producer. And so we took it from there. She comes in as a proper English, a proper Brit. And then it was, well, how do we need an outfit for her? And so Alan designed her an extraordinarily attractive outfit. And we kept on going. And then when the X-Men died, or maybe just before that, my thought was, she's a telepath. She doesn't really have any, she's a telepath. She wants to be an alpha combat character, because of the two of them, her and Captain Britain, she's actually the one better suited to be Captain Britain than Brian, the younger twin. But he was a guy and she was a gal, and that's, screwed her up. But in battle, she has no effective means of protecting herself. So that's where the armor came from. And that was fine. And then I did this 3-part story with Jim Lee, which was sort of his audition piece to become artist on the X-Men. And just for the hell of it, I thought, oh, the heck with it. Let's do something really stupid and turn her into an Asian because it's comics and we can do that. And at that point, I was ridiculously self-indulgent. Well, I'm always ridiculously self-indulgent. I just got away with it this time. And it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. The audience reaction was they wanted more. So we just, I talked about it with Mark Silvestri, who was drawing the book. And I don't know I think at that point Bob was editor, or it might still be Anne to a smaller extent. I'm not sure. But we figured, what the heck? We can always fix it if it gets boring. And we just went with it. And then 15 years later, 94, 04. The better part of a quarter century later, apparently, they decided, nope, this is dumb.
Yeah.
And reverted it. But then it led to all sorts of unanticipated consequences, because the whole point was Mojo transformed her because she's his star. It was not a case of, hi, Betsy's here. We'll switch minds with this convenient Asian person we have lying around the basement, leaving aside how the hell do they do that? It's somewhat beyond current terrestrial superhero technology. And Matsuo Soriyaba, I can remember the name because I just looked him up, who did it, is not that smart, at least not when I was writing him. But apparently all the things that I'd worked out in my head that I knew what was going to be, after I got separated from the book in 91, other writers came in and fixed it. So they invented, an Asian twin that was with whom Betsy switched eyes. Mind you, I have no idea where her real body's been for the last 20 years.
That's what I was wondering. Where?
Yeah, well,
yeah.
And then the even funnier giggle was, I had a complete origin and reality worked out for Gambit and Mr. Sinister, and they just totally screwed it up.
Well,
there you go.
Yeah, no, there's a few things I want to dive into there, but Michael, I wanted to give you a moment to talk about sort of just what it is about Psylocke, because I know that I believe Rogue's your number one, but I know that she's up there.
You got it all wrong. Jean's my number one. What are you talking about?
I was wrong.
Yeah, but she's dead.
Well,
you're quick to remind everyone.
She does that from time to time. She gets over it, but yeah. So
no, I love Psylocke. Yeah,
I wanted you to talk about Psylocke, but also I know that maybe I'm overstating things, but I know that your favorite X team at a point was Excalibur, right, Michael?
Oh, I loved when I was younger. They were before pre-Generation X. I loved Excalibur, and then when Generation X came out, that was like my age. That was just the perfect comic book for me.
But what's not to love? I mean, you've got this huge, square-faced, square-jawed, square-brained hunk, Brian.
Yeah.
You've got his girlfriend, who he takes totally for granted, Megan.
Yeah.
You have Nightcrawler, who's the real leader of the team, and everyone knows it, but they're just creeped out by it. You've got Kitty, yay, who's a ghost, and you've got Rachel, who dresses better than all of them put together.
That's true.
That was one of my draws. Was Rachel? One of my draws was Rachel for sure. For some reason, that costume has always really resonated with me. I had that giant pull-out poster from X-Men #1 that Jim Lee did that has like almost every X-Men on it, and oh my god, I still have that. I love that. I need to get it reframed, but
one has to admire an outfit, a skin-tight outfit that is, as he said, that's tighter than skin, with giant spikes all over it.
Mm-hmm.
With, you know, the
so punk rock before I even knew what punk rock was.
Well, it's, I mean, the thing with being Phoenix is that clothes are irrelevant. You wear whatever crosses your mind at the time. None of it's really clothes per se, except for the issue where Kitty discovered the outfit lying around and had to phase herself into it, commenting on how this is so tight, even I'm embarrassed. On how can anyone walk on these giant heels?
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it and thinking, you realize the subtext is, it's Rachel. She doesn't leave her clothes lying around. She just reanimates them. If they're left around, there must be a subtext here. And someone's obviously embracing it. But I will say no more because that will create a whole new online stir.
Well, given what you were saying about how Psylocke was actually more capable of being Captain Britain in your eyes, what do you think about the new Excalibur series putting her in charge as Captain Britain, back in her British look? I guess her hair's a little lighter, fluffier, and she's got her Captain Britain suit on that makes her look pretty tough.
I will confess that
you ain't read it.
I don't read it. I mean,
I get it.
I read the first year of Alan of Hickman's run simply because they gave me an online link. Well, because I had to see what everyone was talking about.
Sure.
Because, as my wife pointed out quite emphatically, she was tired of me walking around kvetching, if not outright saying, they're doing it again. At least I could know, whether it really is good or not, and whether I know what I'm talking about. But I just...
Do you like the idea of it?
Of what?
Of Psylocke being the new Captain Britain.
I don't care.
Okay.
No, because conceptually speaking, I no longer have a clue who any of these people are. They're just mannequins in skin-tight costumes. They don't seem to have a life that I've been able to see. And it may have changed in the last 2 years, but the world I grew up in, the world where I was taught to write Marvel by Stan, and I ended up writing Marvel, I always looked on it as the story, to use the FF as a paradigm, it's the story of Reed, Ben, Sue, and Johnny, who put on suits and go save the universe as Mr. Fantastic, the Thing, the Human Torch, and the Invisible Girl. But how often in the course of those series are they ever referred to by those code names? It's always Reed, Ben, Sue, and Johnny, which conveniently gets them over. Why are we calling Reed's wife the Invisible Girl?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like it's Superboy.
Well, and I remember they took the time to do that during John Byrne's run. It was just sort of like, I don't even know how old she was supposed to be, but it's just like, yeah, so just call me the Invisible Woman, if you don't mind.
I would figure Franklin is now in high school, so she's on the dark side of 40, however you want to look on it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Depending on where you view the heritage of the FF, Reed and Ben are either in their 90s.
Because they fought in World War II together, allegedly. Yeah.
Or even sensibly speaking, pretty close to in the 60s range.
Yeah.
This is the problem with reality, is that you got, with an integrated continuity, You've got to pay attention to stuff like that. This is why I got so furious with Excalibur when solely to allow for the opportunity of Kitty having sex with Pete Wisdom, she was bumped up 6 or 7 years in age.
Right.
I mean, for me as a writer, it's like you're throwing away some of the best years of a character's life in terms of writing, just so she can have shenanigans. But we're an integrated continuity. That means that has to apply to Spider-Man. It's got to apply to the FF. It's got to apply to the Avengers. It gets complicated. It's like going to the movies for a second. Tony Stark saying, in the last 5 years, I married Pepper. I have a child. I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that.
Yeah.
I'll do my best to help save creation from Thanos, but we're leaving my family alone. And you get to the end of the book, the end of the movie, and suddenly, Ant-Man Scott Lang goes home and his daughter's in high school.
Yeah.
Or college even. Surprise. I mean, it's a great moment, character moment. But then when Peter and conveniently his whole class, who apparently disappeared as well to make the Spider-Man movies sensible, they're all still young, which is a nice thing. But it's always struck me as it's that kind of convenience, storytelling convenience, was always more of a DC thing than a Marvel thing. We tried to hold on to a semblance of practical reality, and now it's all gone out the window.
Yeah.
And that's when it's not. I read comics. I fell in love with Marvel because they had at least a grasp on the world outside my window, and that was cool.
Yeah.
And for them, and now they live on a fantasy island. They don't interact with any regularity, it seems, with any kind of world that I recognize.
Yeah.
So it's like, why should I care?
Right. It's a fantasy island with Ricardo Montalban and Hervé Villechaize nowhere to be found. So it's not the kind of fantasy island we would welcome. And when I started reading comics, it was in the early 80s, and the history of Marvel at that point was not even 25 years. So you could have, like, Peter Parker was in grad school, and he had a falling out with Aunt May because he dropped out, and you could do that when you had 20 years, but it's shortly thereafter they were like, oh, he's too old. Why do we have him get married to Mary Jane? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And I was just like, yeah, but I really liked the stories that made me really fall in love with the character. And I think it's just a completely different approach now. Sorry, what were you going to say, Chris?
Well, but the problem, there's a reason, conceptually speaking, why Reed and Sue are the only successful married couple in comics. The FF are the paradigm of the real world. We've got the dad, and we've got the mom, and we've got the kid, and we've got the uncle and the brat. That's cool. But every other marriage that we've ever tried has crashed. And there's a reason for it. Firstly, the minute you marry somebody, all the suspense of their life goes out the window. Because if Peter Parker I did it in X-Men Forever. It's like when I did the Rogue Nightcrawler switch, and suddenly she became blue, furry, and a hottie. I'm sorry, I should have done that 35 years ago.
Right.
And Nightcrawler suddenly had a body that was beautiful, but from his perspective, totally dull. But Peter takes one look at her and it's like, oh my goodness. Jeans, calm down. Those moments aren't available when you're married. And the minute you're married, you immediately have to take the next step, which is, you're going to have a kid?
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, this is what irked me so much, conceptually speaking, with Aurora and T'Challa. I mean, I'm sorry, from comic book perception, she was so higher than him on the sales food chain. How come he gets top billing?
Yeah, that's a great
and
point.
Then from the flip side of it, like it or not, in geopolitical terms, royals get married for one reason. And that was why Elizabeth I never got married, because the whole point is to have an heir. And that's the only reason the woman's there, which it's hard from a practical, well, from a moral perspective to look at that. But from a practical perspective, that's the way it is. So if T'Challa marries Aurora, that's because he needs a baby T'Challa. And the longer you don't do that, the more unreal it becomes from a geopolitical real world perspective, which you kind of have to bear in mind when you're doing this to make it valid. And all the suspense goes out of the relationship. The positive suspense goes out of the relationship, because all you really have to offer the reader at this point is, will they break up? And it's like, why are we rooting for a disaster?
Yeah.
Yeah,
which, you see in other medium. I did not think that when I was going to start chatting with you today that I thought that I would invoke Rhoda, the sitcom with Valerie Harper, but they married her off, and it was a couple of weeks, and they're like, oh wait, the character doesn't work at all anymore. And and on Cheers, you had the will they or won't they, Sam or Diane, and then they got together, and you're like, oh no, the possibly won't they was more entertaining than the will they.
Yeah. But that's the whole point. The suspension is what matters. And that's why when you have a series, I will lay you odds that the writer's room conception of the last season of Magnum was totally different when they thought the 10th year was it.
Yeah.
I mean, even when they got to the point where he sacrifices himself to save the woman he loves.
Oh yeah.
And the original ending was he goes walking off to the angels, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
And then, of course, CBS screwed it up and said, nope, you're coming back for one more.
We need to do another one. And then the actual ending is so anticlimactic and forgettable. But that was literally my mom's favorite show on television. I saw every episode of Magnum PI. And I remember she hated that last season because it's like you had the perfect ending. And then it's just like, no, let's do a little more.
The first half of it is like, how do we get out of this mess? We got to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
What I loved about it, though, and see, this is me as a total fan geek. The minute they said, we're bringing back Magnum PI, and I thought, bingo, I got it. It's been 30 years. Magnum's daughter, Lily, is now a lieutenant commander in the Navy.
Right.
Or a lieutenant colonel, major lieutenant colonel in the Marines. Well, lieutenant commander in the Navy. She's been a badass. She's been to Iraq. She's been to Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, the works.
Of course.
But something's happened. And she's come home, to the beach house. You pick up where Magnum left off with Magnum's daughter as the new Lily Magnum. Well, and you find a new, helicopter teams. You build up the paradigm all over again, but it's with her. And you even have the joke part, even with Blue Bloods. You write in a couple of episodes a season where she calls on her dad, who can either be in the last of his years in the Navy as a lieutenant, as a vice admiral, as a vice admiral running special ops, or a retired admiral, 3 stars or 4 stars, and just take it from there. And for me, this is where I get to be a fantasist, I would have loved it. I would have just sat there and gone, whoa. And instead you just basically reboot the original.
Yeah.
Except if you put Tom Selleck next to the guy they've got playing Magnum now, the guy they've got playing Magnum now might, if he stood on a box, come up to Tom Selleck's like shoulder blade.
Yeah.
And
I didn't even know they were redoing that show.
Oh, yeah.
For like 3 years. If there were no original Magnum, this would be okay.
Yeah.
Is it on CBS?
Yeah. It's like
that's why I never see it.
Yeah, it's
I think
like
that's
the
a throwaway channel.
Well, it's like what they did because they have the reboot of Hawaii Five-0, so they're like, great, let's just
canceled.
Yeah, right. But it's like, let's just do that with Magnum,
Yeah, but the joke, of course, is I, who love alpha female characters, they made Higgins same character, but she's now a beautiful Brit woman. And I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, no.
It just doesn't work.
No. She's a lovely actress. It's a great character. It doesn't work because
CBS is just a terrible network.
Well,
but the paradox is, if you're watching the show, she's so obviously the alpha in the relationship. You're thinking, that's not what they wanted. I'll bet.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like, if you have Aurora and T'Challa married in the comic, then you've got to do something with it. You've either got to make it Storm co-starring T'Challa, Black Panther, or Black Panther co-starring Storm, or 2 parallel books. But it doesn't work because she's the leader of the X-Men. He's the leader of Wakanda. She's in a series of B+ movies from Fox. He's in a series of A+ movies from Marvel. It's, all of the passion is on his side of the table, not hers. And yet, in terms of publishing, she's the better character.
Yeah.
And it just, once you have the wedding, there's nowhere to go. And then to end it with him walking in and saying, "Oh, by the way, I annulled the wedding. You're out." What a dick.
I have a great...
But see, that's why I did it in X-Men Forever, where it turns out that the Storm that appeared in Uncanny after the Genosha stories was a clone, and the real Storm was hidden. And then my perfect Storm was a villain. And, she shows up in Wakanda and gets Killmonger to kill the entire royal family, and then he kills T'Challa, and then she kills him. And she ends up running things, and her rationale is, I love T'Challa with all my heart, but I'm not playing second fiddle to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm crazy.
What were you going to ask, Michael?
Sorry.
I have this storyline in my head that I think would be so amazing for the upcoming X-Men films whenever they come out. And I know they're wanting to mix all these together. And I know that's going to get probably a little messed up by the passing of Chadwick Boseman. I personally want to see Shuri as the new Black Panther, given her recent...
a lot of support for that online.
But given her recent comments about anti-vax and questioning it, I'm not quite sure if we're going to get that now. But my dream would be to see Shuri end up as Black Panther and Storm in the future X-Men movies becoming a couple. What would you think about a lesbian relationship between Shuri and Storm to tie in the 2 franchises together?
You're probably asking the wrong person, since the sort of under the table, the element that's part of the conclusion of my giant arc X-Men the End was me, well, Kitty, she's not the first Jewish president. She's not the first woman president. She might not even be the first gay, let's see, Jewish, female, mutant. Yep, that's 3. But the fact that her eldest daughter, but she is a first, and the fact that her eldest daughter is a redhead tells you what she is. Yes, I'm conditioned by the comics code. I don't bring it on. I don't say it out loud.
Right.
No. From my perspective, Kitty's the first gay president.
Right, which I think that a lot of the storytelling that you did, you can't really even, I mean, even 1991, I would say you weren't really touching on those issues at all, no matter how much you might have wanted to.
Comics code.
Yeah, exactly.
But to answer your question, though, the relationship in film would have the same problem as the relationship in comics. Who's on top?
I think that could be fun to watch. Those Wakanda women are tough.
That's true. They are very tough.
Aurora.
Yeah.
And you have to find a way to resolve that aspect of the equation equitably. It's like, again, I'm coming from my old fart perspective, but there are a lot of questions, a lot of aspects of their lives to which my instinctive reaction is, it's none of your damn business. Use your own judgment. And there are a lot of moments in current publishing where A and B are together. Whoa, let's have a wedding. Whoa. And it becomes all about the event and not about the people. And to me, whether it's a heterosexual or a homosexual, any kind of relationship, it has to be about the people as people. The label that goes on it, whether they're just dating, whether they're a long-term relationship, whether what, should grow out of who they are as people, not out of, we're doing this seminal moment. Because the minute you say, let's do a gay marriage, and how well have this heterosexual marriages gone over in comics?
Yeah.
I mean, Peter cut a deal with the devil to get out of his marriage with Mary Jane. What the hell is that? What kind of message is that?
I just really want to see Black Panther and Storm together, no matter how I get it.
No matter who Black Panther is? No matter who Black Panther is, because was this what you wanted when it would have been Chadwick Boseman in Black Panther continuing?
Yes, okay. I wanted him with
whoever
Storm.
Black Panther is. That's it. Okay.
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, but then you'd have to get Chadwick Boseman and Angela Bassett 30 years ago.
Sure.
But that's why I said Angela Bassett could be Storm as his mom. That's the next best thing, as far as I was concerned.
That's fair, yeah.
But I mean, this is where I prompt hundreds of thousands of viewers writing in and saying, what is this old fart white guy doing? I had the year when I was plotting out X-Men Forever, I was working a year ahead. And so in the story, Aurora takes over as Queen of Wakanda, which I thought was, cool. Because I was laying waste to the Marvel universe anyway, one way or another. And Kitty and Gambit, because that was the original relationship Gambit was supposed to have with the X-Men, go down to Wakanda to watch her back. Except in Wakanda, the Panther gods are really pissed off. Why? Because Storm is a goddess. She's been to Asgard. She holds the hammer. She don't need no dumb kitty cats. She's already a boss.
Right.
The Panther gods are pissed off. Wait. Look at that kid. Her code name is Shadow Cat. She's already a cat. So Kitty goes to bed one night, has a nightmare where she and Lockheed, well, she ends up fighting the Panther gods. And the last image she has is losing. And then she wakes up and goes, oh, God, what an awful dream. Glad that's over. Goes over to the window, to the mirror, looks at it, and what looks back at her is the reflection of the genetic daughter of T'Challa and Aurora. And what the gods did was they just rebuilt her from the genes up. And along the way, they were supposed to erase her memory, but she fought too hard. So she knows who she is, except she also knows she's the daughter of Aurora and T'Challa. And then she knows every language on earth except one. And to her, it sounds like total gibberish. English. She doesn't talk English to anybody. She doesn't understand English with anybody.
Wow.
So what happens is she becomes the Shadow Panther. A panther who's a ghost. And the bigger problem is Aurora understands what's been done, except, oh my God, Kat, you're my daughter. Oh, with each page, she falls more and more in love with her daughter. With each page, Kat falls more and more in love with her mother. With each page, the bond between the Shadow Panther and Wakanda becomes more intense. Can she get out of this? Does she want to get out of this? How do I fix it? And I figured, I don't know, I'll just string it along until I get yelled at or whatever. And fortunately, the book got canceled, so I never have to worry about it. But for me, it would be a way of, most importantly, introducing, because for Kat, this is a new experience, Wakanda. It would be a way of exploring Wakanda and introducing Wakanda on a comprehensive level to the audience and helping people, me included, understand what makes the land so special and what makes the Panther so important. But that's what this is all about, is presenting a reality that is new to the readers and then exploring it, but with the ability to do so in a comic that you don't have in a movie. I mean, you sit there through the 7 hours of Endgame and finale, or whatever the hell, the two Avengers.
Infinity War, and then Endgame was the second one.
Whatever.
Clocked in at a brisk 3 hours and 2 minutes.
That's the second one, but you add in the first one plus the outtakes, and you're up to 7, I bet you.
You're up to 7, you're right.
But they're great films. They're really fun adventure films, but 40% of them, at least 40% of them, are fights. What do you actually learn about the people? Well, you learn that Cap misses, his life. What's her face?
Peggy.
You find that Tony desperately does not want to lose his daughter and his real world. That Scott Lang has the moment of rebirth. Oh my God, I found my world. How do I bring the rest of it back? The Hulk can suddenly speak English. Whoa. But these are all character moments. That's what makes you sit through the whole thing and feel a sense of exhilaration at the end. Whereas you sit through Joss's iteration of Justice League And it's like, for me, the moment where the film actually had a resonance was the 30 seconds in Smallville.
Oh, yeah.
When Clark's looking around and Lois comes out the back door. And all I could think of was like, can we keep going for another 5 minutes, please? No, I mean, I sit there watching it and I said, why the hell did you have to kill off Kevin Costner right off the bat? He couldn't live for a couple of films? I mean, you're telling me that young Superman could not go ka-choo and blow away the tornado before his dad got killed? Come on. It's because when you see actors who are so right in the role, give them a moment. Have the reader really fall for them and then hit them with the hammer.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all about Clark, but it's also all about Clark's relationship with the Kents. It's all about Clark's relationship with Lois and Lois's relationship with Clark. And maybe there's a relationship growing between Bruce and Diana, except that now that 1988?
1980, Wonder Woman 1984, yeah.
What a convenient year. I wonder if that has a meaning. Now they brought, Steve Trevor back. And I understand now, okay, she gets the wish. But then what happens at the end if she loses him a second time? And how does that stretch forward over the next 30 years to when she shows up in in Justice League? But at least the character questions. It's like, I was surprised. Sorry, I'm ranting about DC, but I was surprised when I saw Aquaman because, this is actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
I never expected.
Well, I think the character work is better in the films that work. Obviously, the first Wonder Woman works because you care about Diana, and for me personally, I will always prefer the Christopher Reeve Superman movies because Clark is so great in those movies, and it's a part that they almost throw away for the Henry Cavill movies. And he looks like Superman. He's a good Superman. Good. What's that?
He was really good as Clark.
Yeah, but they just didn't do enough of it, and that's, so it's like they're missing out on so much of that. And I don't know. I mean, I think that you're right. I didn't know what to expect from Aquaman. Never really a favorite of mine. I mean, he was on the Super Friends cartoon when I was a kid, so I knew who he was. But I thought that their movies that really work are the ones that they take the time to just make you. It's so crazy. Care about the characters,
Well, and that's why I'm sort of at 6s and 7s about the reboot add-on of Justice League,
the Snyder cut. That's going to be like 4 hours. Yes.
Well, because they give him $90 million and said make another movie.
Yeah.
But my question will be: is he adding character or is he adding fight? I don't know. I mean, you didn't come back in Star Wars because of the really brilliant space battles. You came back because you look at Luke and Han and Leia, and they were cool, and Chewie. There was something about it that hit the zeitgeist, and you want to see what happens next. It's always about character. It's not what?
Oh, no, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, but if a movie works, the Maltese Falcon works because the cast brings those characters to life. We were watching, oh, crikey. Oh, never mind. Forget it.
But
it's just Spider-Man, the comic, works because Stan and Steve brought Peter Parker to life. This geek who wears glasses and a bow tie to high school. I mean,
yeah, even in 1962, that wasn't a good look.
Well, just look at young Sheldon, for crying out loud. He's Peter Parker.
Yeah.
It's like he's brilliant. He's from Queens. Everybody in Queens knew somebody like that in high school, or worse, junior high. But that's it. You fall in love with the people. It isn't a case about, you see this line of cool Dave Cockrum designs on the steps looking at Charlie and saying, hi, we're in skin tight costumes. We're going to save the world. Okay, but who are you? Who is this crazy short Canadian? Who is this tall, magnificent woman from Africa? I mean, there are all these challenging author-reader connections that have to be stitched. For me, X-Men, the movie, came alive when Anna Paquin, right after the bar fight, they're driving down the road and she looks at Hugh and says, "Does it hurt?" And he looks at her and he looks at his hand and he looks out the window and he looks at his hand and he looks out the window and he said, "Every time." And, we're sitting there in Governor's Island. It's the grand premiere. All the cast is around. And the next thing I know, I'm on my feet. I hear that line. The next thing I know, I'm on my feet and I'm going, yes! Nope, I'm just babbling. Sorry. and my wife is elbowing me in the side and saying, "Shit, sit down and shut up. There are people here." But that was it.
Yeah.
Brian swiped the right line of mine and put it in, and that defined him perfectly. And Hugh's performance defined him perfectly. That's all it takes. But it's got to be there. You've got to have that moment. You've got to have Clark standing in the field, looking at the corn and then looking at Lois, and they're having that moment. And she says, "I've got to send you back." And it's like, no, you don't. Just take 5 more minutes, for crying out loud. Give the audience something deeper. And then it's all CGI BS in Russia.
That's true.
Well, no, it's with character, you can have surprises. And surprises are what you need in films and stories like these. Things that grab you out of left field and make you sit back and go, "Huh, didn't see that one coming. Where do we go from here? How do we go from here? Why am I falling in love with a comic book character? Why does what happens next matter?" And it shouldn't be about the machinations of global policy. It should be about people, because people are who we care about more. Otherwise you're just running around the same jogging circle again and again and again.
Well, before we go, I want to know what you thought about New Mutants, because I know last time we spoke, it had not come out yet, and I think last time we spoke, we also never would have imagined in a million years it was going to be the biggest movie in America. The pandemic seemed to do wonders for the box office numbers for this movie.
Yeah.
What did you think?
I did see it at the drive-in, by the way, so I did see it.
We have a little
safely
wager. Christian thinks you loved it. I think you hated it. So I want to know which one of us is right.
I'm going to bet neither of us.
Ah!
I think it was a very nice first act.
Very nice first act, yeah.
It needed the other two acts of the movie to go with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it had this feeling of, I was saying this after I saw it. You felt like this was the pilot for a New Mutants TV series that you knew was never actually going to get made by the time you finally saw it. And I felt a lot of potential, especially early, as you're talking about, as we got to know the characters, as we've been talking about so much. I think that the first act, certainly the strongest. And then I guess the fact that we finally got to, we got a Lockheed on screen was something to be excited about.
So good.
But Chris,
your
eyes say a different story for getting to see Lockheed.
You didn't like the puppet?
Well, I'm not even talking about the puppet.
It's not her puppet.
Yeah,
it's not her dragon.
Kitty's dragon.
No,
I loved the puppet.
The problem is, I loved Sophie's movie. I don't understand why it's called Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
I think Simon Kinberg did a wonderful job with the script and the direction. But by the time Marvel expressed itself in a forthright and unambiguous manner, it had nothing to do with Phoenix. You know that story, right?
Yeah, that the Captain Marvel movie basically dictated that they changed the film that was released as Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, the entire film from the moment that the train appears is a reshoot.
Yeah,
that was why it was held back 1.5 years. They had to get everybody back together again, which I quite understand, and I'm really pissed because all of the powers that Captain Marvel has were powers that Dave Cockrum and I gave Binary because Jean was dead and we hadn't brought back Rachel yet. And I figured our attitude was, we created both of them. What the hell? We'll just do it.
Right.
Who knew there were going to be movies, for crying out loud? And now, what is it? There's all sorts of rumors floating around Hollywood or floating around online that what's her face won't be coming back as Captain Marvel.
Oh, Brie Larson.
I think this a long time ago.
Yeah, but I think that there's a contingent that seems to want that. But I think in general, they as in Feige, it seems to be happy with her, and I think he might be the only one whose opinion matters.
What? Not happy with a person whose film made 1.3 billion?
Yeah,
I mean, but sorry.
Go ahead, Michael.
I talked about on this show, there had been an insider that said one of Marvel's biggest female actors was going to be cutting out very soon after the debut. And I thought that it was either going to be Brie Larson and that Rogue was going to take her powers and kill her. Or it was going to be Evangeline Lilly because she was in some hot water at the beginning of the pandemic. But that seems to have blown over.
I don't think people even remember that Evangeline Lilly didn't want to wear a mask or something. Like,
who is she playing?
She's Evangeline Lilly is the Wasp. She's Janet Van Dyne in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Huh.
But I think that Rogue is going to take Brie Larson's powers. She's going to be gone, and then we're just going to have Kamala Khan
as Ms. Marvel.
I think Brie Larson's out of there.
That's a shame because I enjoyed it. I mean,
I think she's too powerful.
If it weren't for the fact that I kept sitting there cursing every time she did anything, but and then depends on who they cast as Rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you're such a fan of Anna Paquin, but that just did not resonate with me.
Well,
it sat somewhere in between like a Jubilee and a Kitty. It never felt like Rogue to me.
No, I thought Anna Paquin was a lot of fun, but The problem with the first 3 X movies is it's hard to do a canon that is chock-a-block with female characters when the person who's primarily responsible for the films has absolutely no empathy or with female characters.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that that could be a fundamental problem.
You know, the one thing Joss brought to the Avengers was an empathy with, one of the things was an empathy with female characters. It wasn't there with, you know, but that's a whole different thing. But I guess the Dark Phoenix, you know, there was nothing of Phoenix in it. You know, the only ghost image was that little bit cloud speck in the sky at the very end, the camera panning up and you see this sort of blitch off in the distance. But no, I thought so. Other than that, you had a lot of cool stuff there. If they just called it Jean Grey's Bad Day.
I never understood why you love that movie so much, because it is so different from your original story.
Yeah, but that's because I didn't consider it anywhere near the original story. That's why I'm saying it was, for me, it was Jean Grey's really bad day. And it's like, okay, on those terms, yes. It had nothing more to do with Dark Phoenix or Phoenix than the original, which hurts because Simon did this to make up for that.
Right.
But by the same token, you go over to New Mutants, and I'm looking at the cast, and 4 out of 5 are pretty much there. And I thought Bobby, the guy playing Bobby as an actor, wasn't bad. But the whole point of Bobby in Brazilian terms is that he looks African.
Right.
And Brazilian.
A lot of people had a problem with that.
Yeah.
Well, and not only does he look African, his father's an effing billionaire.
Yeah.
So it's like his dad has the power, his dad has the influence, and everybody he meets is creeped out because it's like, ew, a black person who owns like half of Brazil. That's icky. And that's what Bobby has to deal with in school. And no offense, but I wish Danny were taller.
How much did you like Ileana, though?
Oh, come on. It's Maisie, for Christ's sake. It was like...
No, Ileana. No, Ileana.
Oh, Ileana.
Oh,
sorry.
Magic, yeah.
She was fine. But again, it's...
I'm sorry. I thought she was incredible. She was the movie for me.
Oh, to a large extent. But the problem here is I'm sitting there and it's like Maisie looks at Danny, Danny looks at her, and it's something, oh, sweet mystery of life. And it's like, okay. A, that's a third act moment, not a first act moment.
Right.
B, it's not justified at all. And C, it's not relevant to the story at all. I mean, if you're going to make that kind of moment, why couldn't it have been Bobby and Sam? It's
fair.
Sam was getting a lot of hate. Did you think that Sam was all right, or no?
I kept wondering what the broken arm was.
Well, we got some people in the chat asking about yours.
Oh, well, we talked about that at the beginning. These must be people who cycled in a little later. Yeah, he fell.
I was walking. I hit a puddle. I hit a hole in the street that was filled with leaves. I did some spectacular acrobatics, and when I fell, it was my body's way of telling me, "You should have stopped eating 7 months ago."
Oh, no.
So I broke. It's like I landed with vigor. And
well, back to his arm, I just assumed that, from him blasting off on that chain outside, he must have just hurt his arm.
I guess.
But
yeah, they didn't explain that very
well. It's just,
well.
I mean, having written, what's her face, Dr.
Celia Reyes.
Celia Reyes, yeah.
Reyes. It's like, really?
I was not a fan of her.
Well,
it didn't look like her. It didn't feel like her.
It's all too convenient. Oh, look, here comes the demon bear, who conveniently eats the villain before she crushes the heroes.
Yeah, I did notice that.
There's got to. Oh, nice cover.
Yeah, no. I was gonna transition to talking about since you brought up Danny, but please finish your thought before we.
No,
it's.
What rating would you give the movie?
What, you mean?
Like an A to F.
Oh, And I really wanted it to be. I mean, also I had the disadvantage of watching it online, and like a third of it was all disintegrated pixels.
Oh yeah, that
it was very hard for us at the drive-through.
Yeah,
because
you seeing it at a drive-in, the demon bear sequence was really dark.
So dark.
The way it was projected. It watching it at home on Blu-ray, it looks a lot better. But yeah, so visually there were some technology issues that got in the way, I guess.
But again, it's like, and now we're free, and I'm thinking, well,
yeah.
No offense, IDs. Money, do you know where you are?
Yeah,
and you've been the, how shall we say it, guests of a villainous corporation that will probably is probably aware that Dr. Reyes has fallen off the charts or will be soon. And if you're walking, how fast can you get to the nearest community? And it's like, that's why I'm saying a first act, not a first film. And
I got real Runaways vibes from the end of that movie.
Oh,
I haven't seen Runaways, but
yeah,
it is very much like a, I wouldn't have been surprised if there were commercials.
Yeah. And I guess Josh Boone, the director, when he was originally planning it, this was going to be a trilogy. So yeah, this movie very much was a first act to him.
No, but that
there wasn't a ton of character development.
You cannot do that.
Yeah,
because there's no reason at the end of this film why I want to come back for the second.
That's a great point.
You've got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the process, you have to fall passionately in love with the characters. Because if you don't do that, there's no reason to come back, especially at $15 a ticket.
I mean, when it was over, Christian and I were arguing about who the star was. He's like, obviously the star is Danny. And I'm like, no, it's Ileana. And I'm like,
I thought they were both good, but
that's the problem. There's no focal point.
Yeah,
I felt like Ileana was the only one who got like the really
she's the only one who did anything.
Yeah, she got like the good action scenes. She got the good lines. She had the funny puppet, and I felt like most everyone else, they didn't really dig into them very much.
Well, Bobby fell into a pool and melted it.
Yeah,
and that was pretty much it for the whole movie. He did dishes.
Yeah.
It's Rain we see twice as a dog.
Yeah, I didn't like the dog.
I was not happy with the dog form that we got. Yeah.
Well, and then when she jumps on Reyes, she's basically, I found myself thinking of the werewolf vampire series with
Twilight.
Yeah, the 4-parter.
Yeah.
But it was like,
yeah.
But Rain tears apart Reyes But then, is there a reaction in Reign to what she's just done? You know, it's like, I thought it was, you know, either I didn't see it, which is the director's fault in editing, or it isn't there, which is the director's fault for writing it. They all say at the end, Danny, you're the leader. Why? Because she made the bear calm down and go away? Because the bear is the dark side of her psyche? So does that mean it can come back again down the road? And who the hell wiped out her hometown?
Yeah.
The bear lost its shit and slaughtered everyone she knows. And by the way, where was her mom? I mean, hiring an actress can be expensive, but it would have been nice to say, where's mom?
Yeah.
Oh, Danny, she's gone. It's like, okay, at least it's covered.
At least you addressed it. Yeah.
You know, it's, is that it? Am I missing anybody? That's 5.
Well, tell us about your new books coming out. I know you really probably can't tell us much, but I'd love to know more about X-Men Legends, about how many variants we're going to get for Chris Claremont Anniversary Special.
Well, okay.
All that good stuff.
Oh, where the hell is it? Oh, there's the camera.
Yep, there it is.
This is for the mega...
The Paragon edition.
Paragon edition.
Yes.
Which originally had one original story in it by me and Salva, which is Prelude to Future Past. And this is sort of the surprise. I'm blowing the surprise, I guess. This is another original story, which will be part of that, which is... kind of like the day after Logan, the abortive wedding. And there are consequences. And Mariko has to decide whether or not to save Logan. Logan has to decide whether or not to save... Well, it's not even a decision for him to save Mariko. And the only problem is who they're up against. Sabretooth.
And yeah, I see, because you told me before we started, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if he's going to be able to say that. So yes, he's up against Sabretooth, who and uninvited wedding guest Sabretooth.
Well, it's not... This isn't traditional Marvel Sabretooth. This is my Sabretooth, who is taller, better looking, and far, far more dangerous than Logan. And you can be the judge of that when you read the story.
Yeah. So that's the anthology. The anthology series you have coming out.
You're talking about X-Men Legends, which I guess you'll contribute sporadically. It's different creators, different eras of X-Men history.
Can you tell us any of the stories or characters that you'll be working on in that book?
Well, if it's the one I'm thinking of, we're doing it as interesting that you put the image of Danny on screen. Wait.
Well, there's so much out there.
Yeah, you can't even keep up with all the books.
This is X-Men Legends, and and I believe you wouldn't be writing the first issue of that. I think Fabian's writing that, but this is it's an ongoing. And in the solicitation, they mentioned that you'll be one of the writers on occasion for that series.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
Heard it here first, Chris.
Yeah.
No. See, because the other major project that I was working on is the Salva cover that's come out already, where you see Hela and Gambit and Kid Rogue and Danny. Yep, that's it.
Yep.
Kid Storm
and Binary.
Yeah.
So what you have there is the sequel to Bill's and my mutant special from last December.
War Children, yes.
Yeah, where it ends with Hela telling Danny, "We'll talk again." Well, this is it. And Hela basically says, "Kiddo, you got the winged horse. You got accepted by the Valkyries. Your life isn't what you thought it would be." And Danny, of course, being a teenager and an indigenous person and a pain in the ass, says no. Of course, then let's see, who sets her on fire? I think Hela does.
I just noticed the demon bear in that cover.
Well, this is the variant, one of the variants for the anniversary special. Yeah, so we see
but that's the least of her problems, trust me.
Yeah.
Because I threw in pretty much all the manifestations of death that I've written in my career, which is Hela and John Kowalski, the Polish death from War as Heck, and the old Indian woman who Danny encountered when a friend of hers is dying, and she tries to save him. And oh yes, Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
So we got the full panoply here. And in the process, Danny encounters 3 different eras. One involves a battle between, let's see, original FF and Salva's and my FF when Sue became the Baroness von Doom. And the third one is from Exiles, where we discover from a world where the FF plane crashes and Namor rescues Sue because Reed, Ben, and Johnny die, and she grows up to become Queen of Atlantis.
Wow.
Oh, and just to get really annoying, Namor's black.
Well, we can pull on the threads for that in a minute. I know Michael needs to run.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. I want to
Fine.
talk to you a little bit more about this and a couple questions from the chat. Chris, you've been generous with your time as always. I promise I'll only take a few more of your minutes, but I know Michael has to run.
Sorry about that, Michael.
No, you're fine. I always enjoy chatting with you, and I can't wait to talk to you again.
Oh, but just to finish off, the second part is Binary versus Rogue in a replay of the fight in San Francisco where Rogue stole her powers.
Yes.
And the third one is Gambit and Aurora during their brief stay in New Orleans when they were both stealing the city blind.
Oh, I can't wait to read these.
Yeah.
And we conclude with Danny and Hela having a face-off.
I have to wonder how many pages this is. There's so much in it. Okay, so 32 pages. That's easily 50 pages worth of story crammed into 32. Michael, thanks for your time as always. People can find you on Instagram. I hate Michael Shirley, on Twitter at Michael X Shirley. Chris, anyway, thanks again, Michael. Chris, I won't
have a happy Xmas.
Yeah, I won't keep you too much longer. But there were a few. There was a question from the chat. This was a while ago that I wanted to get to. Uncanny X-Men 194. This is from Jeff Winstead, who is a great comic creator in his own right. Uncanny 194 is one of my favorite issues. Did you get pushback on the name Nimrod since the name's biblical origins, or was because most kids like him thought it just meant moron? It's a fascinating character that I remember. There's some great John Romita Jr. Covers. 209 is a good one. I mean, there was a lot of Nimrod for the space of about a year or so. And I don't want to say he's he's forgotten, but there's so many characters that it's easy to just kind of mentally move on from others. But talk a little bit about Nimrod.
Well, yes, the name is kind of a joke because he's the smartest, deadliest, most formidable Ultra Sentinel ever. And even though it's a kind of a paradoxical use of the name, it looks cool. So, you can make all the Nimrod jokes you like. He'll just grind you into dust. Yes, I wanted to do more of him, but I could say that about a lot of characters.
Yeah, something you alluded to earlier was something that I think I've never gotten around to asking you about it because there's always so much to talk about. Your original conception for Mr. Sinister is in the backup stories in classic X-Men. So there's a little boy at the orphanage with Scott Summers.
Yep.
And he doesn't want Scott to leave.
Yep.
And so every time Scott gets adopted, this beast manifests itself and
every time he makes a friend.
Yeah, every time he makes a friend. Right, exactly. So it was a fascinating idea, and I love the idea that it's like, well, a kid would come up with a name for something that rhymes, so Mr. Sinister,
Well, it's not, the details are fairly simple.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a mutant. Yes, he was born in 1820. His lifespan is well over 1,000 years, but he ages proportionately. Therefore, by the 21st, 22nd century, 20th, 21st centuries, he looks like barely middle school. But he's fully developed.
Right.
And he's a supervillain. He's a boss supervillain. But what self-respecting supervillain is going to take orders from a 9-year-old kid? This isn't DC. So he built himself a false face, a simulacrum. That's Mr. Sinister. But take a step back. This is comic books. Emotionally, in terms of imagination and emotion, he's a 9-year-old kid. So Mr. Sinister looks like a pre-adolescent's vision of what the ultimate bad guy looks like. And if you look at him from that perspective, it makes perfect sense. At least to me, it did.
Yeah.
He's a total exaggeration. Because for me, that was the fun. The punchline, of course, is if you want to see what Mr. Sinister looks like when he grows up, Gambit.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
No, Gambit's him cloned, grown up, and sent to destroy the X-Men from within. That's why he was originally meant to make a beeline for Kitty, because she's the future, he's the adversary, and then it all goes wrong for him, for Mr. Sinister. But that was my conception, and then one of the Anglo writers came in and did an origin story of Sinister in the 19th century, which is total codswallop. And then it all evolved into what it is today, which is not what I had in mind.
Well, and that reminded me of something else you said a while ago. I remember when George Lucas was asked what he thought of the J.J. Abrams sequel trilogy. He likened it to, it was sort of like witnessing a divorce. And, you see, I don't remember the exact words. I couldn't find the quote, but it's basically like you see this thing that used to be a part of your life and now it's with someone else and you don't really have a say anymore because, George was very outspoken about he had a sequel trilogy planned and Disney said thanks, but no thanks. Regardless of what it would have been, they just didn't see his vision. So at some level, I guess you just have to be able to divorce yourself from, I can't worry about what other people do. When
I don't read it. I don't read the books anymore because why? I mean, if I were involved in the X-Men today, I would look at it. I would approach it from the perspective of everybody else, of how would Washington, governmental Washington, react to the existence of Genosha? How would the Avengers react? What perspective would we bring to the equation? That's why when I was doing X-Men Forever, it's like I was tired of 24-foot tall Sentinels that looked like 1960s robots. So what would Sentinels look like in current technology, or with the benefit of current technology? The thing is, you find a way to it's like looking at Star Trek Discovery.
That's the current one on CBS All Access. Yeah.
This is set like 20 years before Kirk.
Yeah.
Where Spock's a young guy. What does that mean? Well, theoretically, that means we haven't gotten to the technological level that was presented in 1966.
Yeah.
Except when you look at all the ships, when you look at the original ship in the first 2 episodes, this is an old technology. They're using the old stuff, and you look at it and it's like, wow, this stuff is really cool. And then you get on the Discovery itself and it's like, whoa, this stuff is really cool. And I'm sorry, there really ought to be a control on the bridge. It's like, it should almost be pulling the ripcord on a lawnmower, because if you're going to have the back half of the ship spin around that ridiculously, you've got to have a really cool way on the bridge of getting it started. But that's just me rambling. No, but the point is, reality changes. It changes constantly. The way we look at the world now is so far removed from the way I looked at the world in 1975 when I was writing this stuff. Give me a break. Therefore, we have to find a way to incorporate it into the books. Great. Then what? Well, that's what the play is. You have to find a way to integrate and excitingly improve on all these aspects. It's again, the question I would have as a manager or a reader is, okay, all the X-Men live on this island, which apparently is wandering around the oceans. Okay, how do we know it's a good island? Who's guaranteeing its reality? Charlie? He seems kind of weird behind the hat. The last time he wore a hat like that, he turned into it was back in New X-Men, and he turned into a villain. So what does that mean? And by the way, you've got these guys who resurrect people every convenient moment, except there are now 20 or 30 dead versions or not dead versions of Kitty lying in the basement.
Yeah.
Which one's the real one? It's like what McCoy always used to say about teleporting. I use the transporter, but is that me that comes out the other end? Is that the real me, or is it a simulacrum? It's actually a really interesting and valid question that might be worthy of an episode to discuss, except if you don't come out with the answer, nothing happens, then you have an ongoing problem. But the same applies here. If you're going to have this world, this island, this reality, you've got to answer all the questions up front that matter, which is, what is the purpose? Where do we go? How do we go? What's the end game? I mean, this is what every writer should do with every piece of creative material. How do the pieces fit together? What is our destination? And if you know that, then you can craft stories that will get you there, but throw in surprises, confusions, gotchas along the way that will keep the audience on the edge of their seat, because that is our job. It should never be standing there watching a bunch of characters hit each other, or a bunch of characters have meaningful one-word conversations with each other. We're proceeding along a route. We may have a sense of where we're going, but every so often we can stop along the way, view the scenery, have a coffee, meet a friend, dump a friend, whatever. But we have to keep moving, and we have to keep moving in a positive, entrancing way that the readers can't resist. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and I think that's sort of been the overarching, throughout this entire conversation, is the importance of characters. And the first time that I ever had a chance to chat with you for an interview, I noticed right away that you referred to, you talked about Kitty and Aurora and Scott and Logan. You didn't call them by their, superhero names, but that's kind of, it made me realize that's why we like those characters. Yeah, Nightcrawler is interesting, but we love Kurt. Scott is not a complicated. I'm sorry, Cyclops is not a complicated person, but Scott is.
Yeah.
And so that's really the key, and that's what it goes back to those Superman movies of just a little bit more Clark goes a long way, because then you can sort of justify why you're like, well, let's trash Metropolis. Okay, but would have been nice to have some Clark along the way.
Well, it's. Why should I care about General Zod?
Yeah.
Aside from the fact it's the fifth person we've seen play the role. He has, we have to have a reason. Why is he who he is? Think about it. We are now the sole survivors of Krypton. Krypton was an interstellar society. Okay. Bingo. That gives you something to anchor your questions about. It's like, the Avengers have gathered together, and there's a threat. Who's the threat from? It's from Darkseid. Who? It's from this guy. What's his face? Who's the idiot who comes down and does all the bad stuff? It's
in the Justice League.
Yeah.
Let's see. You have Steppenwolf in the movie. Yeah.
There you go. It's like, Steppenwolf? Really? It's like, this is an alien name? Okay, it's Jack.
It is Jack.
He's the ultimate alien monster fighter. But somehow the citizens of Earth band together with the gods, with the Atlanteans. We kick his ass and drive him away. And that's how it is for 2,000 years or whatever. Okie dokie. But it needs to flow organically out of the story. You need to be, it's like, I don't want to sit there wanting more, but not wanting more story. I want more character. I want to know Bruce. It's like, for me, why couldn't not Matt Damon,
Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck. Why couldn't Ben Affleck's Bruce be Christian Bale's Bruce 10 years later? The same guy. It happens all the time on TV. James Bond is the same no matter who plays him. That was my dream. It's like, wouldn't it be fun if in Bat Soup, the people he was racing to save, it's not some nameless, and forgive me if I said this before, some nameless executive in the Wayne Corporation building, but Catwoman and the kids. And yes, it would ruin the temptation of Wonder Woman, but so what? If you give him a personal stake in the game. Clark has a personal stake in the game, especially now he's come back to life. He wants to save Lois. Okay, that is understandable. But when all you have are billions of nameless bug thugs and this idiot Steppenwolf, it's so what? It's just, and then at the end, you have Lex Luthor teaming up with old guy in a, we should have our bad guy team.
Yeah.
Really? Come on. You've got to sit there, to me anyway, you have to find a way of relating to all of this in terms of people. I mean, the cool thing about Aquaman in the Justice League is he was scared. He wasn't sure what the hell was going on, which is pretty neat considering his film hadn't come out yet and you didn't know anything about him.
Yeah, true.
Flash, equally empathic. A kid, very much a kid. That's cool. Can I come with you? Why? I don't get much company around here and I'm kind of lonely. Bingo. That's good. He was normal. Cyborg.
Yeah, I think of all of them, we could have benefited from, having Cyborg set up before this movie, because you're doing the big team up movie. And it's like, now you have to meet this guy. And, I think they definitely did a disservice to that character, because it's like, well, we got to cram the origin into like 8 minutes here while we break away from the action, Yeah.
And that's the problem is Marvel's advantage was they established everybody in the individual films before we got to Avengers 1.
Yeah.
And then established them a little more before we got to 2, and then went off the roads completely before we got to Endgame. But at least we knew who the players were. And, again, my classic joke about all of this is you sit there thinking, this film cost $1 billion? Really? To make? Well, think about it. And then you think about it, and oh yeah, Robert Downey, he'll cost X.
Yeah.
And you run through the alpha cast of A+ stars and you realize, and then you run through the alpha cast, the beta cast of A+ stars, the Pims, the this, the that, the other. By the time you get to the bottom of that, of the A-list cast, before you even get to the B list, I wouldn't be surprised if that was like close to $250 million.
Well, especially because so many of them are also producers, written into their deals. And I'd say that Michael Douglas being in that movie is probably the most expensive cameo. Well, maybe short of having Brando in the first Superman, but that was a much bigger part. Yeah, he had a lot to do. Michael Douglas literally stands there at the funeral.
But look, well, that was more an acknowledgement of the 2 films he was in. And presumably the 3rd that's in production. But that's a lot of oomph. I mean, you could see where the money was spent, which is fine. But at least there was a story. At least it had a beginning and a middle and an end. And that's the more if you don't care about, if you presume that the audience knows all they need to know about the characters from page 1, then I think that's when you're skating across very, very, very thin ice. Because yes, you will perhaps satisfy the regular committed readers. But how are you going to build the audience? How are you going to get anybody new interested? If you hold over a book and you flip through it, and yeah, you could read the explanation page and maybe you find out something. Golly, this is cool. I'm just fading into obscurity.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it was bright and sunny when we started, and now
it's winter.
Now it's the twilight. Well, it's the winter. It's almost 5 there. So yeah,
yeah, but it's like at some point you end up taking on faith who these people are, and in a movie, when Wong stands there and says, have we got everyone? And Wong says, this isn't enough.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a neat throwaway. If you watch Doctor Strange, you understand the back, the giggle. If you haven't, it's a neat line. But when you're reading a book, the whole point is you are trying to accomplish two objectives. Give the reader a great time for now, but leave them eager to come back from what happens next. And yes, I have a very specific, particular view derived from all the work I've done of what the answer is to both questions. And I may be wrong, I don't know, but it's my view. And it's because in my case, I like to think it's grounded in my ambition that I want to grab and hold on to new readers with every issue. As I said, if I can sell 7.9 million people, X-Men to 7.9 million readers with issue 1, how much more impactful is the reality of maybe selling 1 million issues to the readers of issue 12?
Right.
And maybe 1.1 to issue 14. And therefore, maybe by issue 24, we're selling on a regular basis 1.5. And maybe by issue 40, we're selling 2. Is that an impossible goal? Probably, but it's an ambition. The point is sorry, I'm keeping looking at my face and I'm turning what I think is the right way and I'm turning the wrong way because of the camera. But oh wait, the camera's over here. Oh, I can't do it.
It's the little blue dot. Yeah.
I know it's green here. But the point is to do better. The point is to start a groundswell of passion on the part of the readers so that they tell their friends and the friends come in to buy it and move on and up from there. It's a simple equation, at least in concept. Execution is where it gets challenging, but that's the goal. Not to take this for granted. And by being aggressive and by being committed, give everybody a really good time. So they'll come back for more.
Yeah, and I think that that was certainly what the key was. And obviously when I started reading comics, if you missed one, it was not that easy to like fill in the blanks. So there is that little bit of like, well, let's bring you back up to speed, but not at the expense of everybody who's here every month, And I think what you're referencing sort of, obviously in the 90s you had the number 1 issue is going to, be pre-sold to, whatever extent. And, from a similar era was the Todd McFarlane Spider-Man number 1, but you really want to give people a reason why they keep buying it, and I think that the view now is just like, well, in like 3 years we'll probably just do another number 1 and people can pick it up there, and when they get to the milestones, then it's like, oh, well, now all of a sudden this was Amazing Spider-Man number 40, but now it's number 850, so I don't know. I guess it is driven by sales, but in a way that's so different than it was 30 years ago,
I don't mind being driven by sales, but I want to give the reader value for their money. I mean, right. $5 is a lot of bucks.
Yeah. And
if you're going to spend that kind of money, I want to give them 20 pages of really cool stuff. And yeah, perhaps not with as many balloons as I used to use, but hopefully by the time they get to the end of Past a Future Days, they will have had a good ride and will have learned something new about the characters and the reality that they didn't know before, and ideally want to see what happens next. So maybe in a year or two, we'll tell a whole different story in that universe.
Yeah, and I think that obviously why was, Uncanny X-Men, why was it one of the best-selling books? Because people came back every month because the stories were good. Yes, of course they love the characters, but you wanted to see what happened next. And I don't know, I guess now it's more like people don't even necessarily buy ongoing comics. They're like, oh yeah, I'll wait for that to be collected in a trade paperback or even a digital paperback, because I know that that's what'll happen in 5-6 months. It'll just be easier for one stop.
Well, the challenge I see in that is, A, if you can't sell the issues, there's no guarantee you will have a compilation.
Fair, yeah.
And B, I mean, I'm looking at a 16-inch screen, which, considering I spent most of the last 10 years working on a 13-inch, is huge. But unless I turn it sideways, I can't see a comic page for in any kind of depth. Certainly can't read the copy. So if you're going to produce a digital edition, how are you going to present it in a way that is easily comprehensible to the reader? I mean, yeah, you can see the images, maybe, but they're tiny. And if you expand the page enough to see the images, you don't see them in their totality. You see a line of panels and a line of panels and a line of panels. And that may not even be enough, because can you read the dialogue or the captions? And I'm not, in no way am I saying it's impossible. It's just challenging, and you have to figure out an answer, which is, I guess, the next step in the equation. But if that's the way we're going to go, that's the answers we have to find to get there.
Right. We've been chatting for a while, and a great comment because they're complimenting both you and I. This has been one of the best episodes of our show, Marvel Movie Talk, which we appreciate that. And obviously, there's so much more to talk about, but there's the key is the Chris Claremont 50th anniversary special, which always available for pre-orders. There are some great variant covers that we showed that, so it makes it very tough. I'm sure Marvel would say, great, just order all of them. But I do like the one with Danny. So, it's tough. It's tough to pick only one.
They all came bundled together.
They might. I didn't realize that was even an option. So that makes it
talking about a $200.
Oh no, that's the Paragon edition. That's where the Days of Future Past prequel is. The anniversary special. Yeah. You have so many. You're like the old plate spinners on the Ed Sullivan Show. There's just too many.
Oh, thanks.
Well, you just have too many things going on, but you're keeping them all up there, and it's just like, well, buy this plate, buy that plate as well. But the final thing I wanted to talk about was, of course, if we're going to talk about Christmas, we have to talk about the most festive issue of Uncanny X-Men ever, which is interesting when you're talking about the difference between digital. This digital version of that cover is this bright blue, but my copy of it is a very, very dark blue, and it's just like, it's so bright and sunny on your computer screen, and I don't know, it sort of takes away from it a little bit, when it gets represented there. But is that the most festive way that Kitty could have spent the holidays, was being terrorized throughout the X Mansion?
Well, considering there's a Christmas tree in the background, and she's not, how should we put it, does not relate to that
holiday. Sure. Yeah.
It's it's never leave a 13-year-old alone with the nuclear weapons.
Right.
It's kind of like during Smitty's episode, where she walks down the hall, looks through a door, and Lockheed responds, and then they get attacked by giant bugs. It's not the safest place in the world. Again, on one hand, it's a really cool adventure. On the other hand, is this the sort of place a 13-year-old really belongs? Even if she's from Chicago?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, the mean streets of Chicago, I guess, a little safer than that. Yeah, but I guess that begs the question: what kind of person sends their child to this school for gifted youngsters?
Well, when you consider that Emma was the first one through the door and Charlie was the second one, and they're both telepaths, and there's a moment in Charlie's issue where Carmen is losing his temper and yelling at Charlie, and Jean just reaches in and calms him down. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, I could go into a whole lecture about my backstory, which is that when Charlie was a search and rescue agent in Vietnam, his Huey crew, Carmen was the pilot and Logan was the gunner. So they've been hanging out together for a long, long time, or they've known each other for a long, long time, or not. Again, it's my history versus everybody else's, and as far as I'm concerned, my history works.
Yeah, and I think it needs to work for you, especially because you revisit these things periodically. But I think it also does a good job, working for all of us. And I wasn't sure. Are you aware of this? It's a website and it's a Twitter feed. It's called the Claremont Run, and they do things sort of like where they analyze, the representation of characters. During this is the initial 17-year run, and they focus on the amount of thought balloons characters have in storylines and things like that, and it's a they really analyze it though, and I believe that the person who does it is in academia, so they really study this work in the way where they discuss it with people like myself, but also there's lots of graphs and charts of, in the Dark Phoenix storyline, this is how many word balloons Kurt had for whatever reason,
Jeez. But think about it. I mean, if you're reading a novel, some paragraphs have dialogue, some paragraphs have thought balloons, some paragraphs have text. Ooh. Now, in a movie, you have dialogue, you have physical action. Occasionally, you have voiceover thought balloons. But most people feel that doesn't quite work. But here's a comic book. Okay, we have pictures. They're worth their 1,000 words. We have word balloons. We could have, if necessary, thought balloons, or perhaps a caption. What does the caption do? It could say, Professor Xavier, School for Gifted Youngsters, Salem Center, New York. Here's Danny cleaning her horse outside. A regular thing. There's Hella. Whoops. But each of the three aspects of presenting dialogue serves a purpose. But readers write in and say, why is that stupid thought balloon or dialogue balloon telling us, speaking as if it's a caption? And the answer is because not everybody knows what the hell's going on here. Why is Scott telling you what his power is or what this other person's power is? Because it might not be readily apparent from the art, intentionally or otherwise, what the power is. And you need to know who everybody is. So I can either tell you in a caption, or we can try and make a convenient line of dialogue or thought balloon, which does the same thing. We are trying to cover a myriad of necessary elements in storytelling using, all the tools at our command. If we do it right, you won't notice, you move on, happy ending. If we don't do it right, you get pissed and you write a letter and we'll fix it. But It's all there for a purpose. And to unilaterally say this, to have a big blazing panel that says Jean Grey School. Okay, what's that? Welcome to Krakoa. What's Krakoa? It's an island. Really?
Right.
It's floating. Okay. You're trying to convey a lot of things. And sometimes putting it in a caption saves you from spending 6 panels visually portraying it. You can then move on to something else, which is equally important. And in the context of the 100 panels you have to tell the story, may be more necessary. It's always a compromise, but it's a compromise of necessity. And that's the tools you have to work with.
Right.
And sometimes you need the caption to cover the fact that someone in the storytelling has made a mistake. That the artist has drawn the ideal picture, that the writer has changed his mind on what needs to be conveyed, whatever. Or the editor has stepped in and said, this is wrong, fix it. But they're all there for a purpose. They all need to be there for a purpose. And you should never be in a position of denying creators the use of necessary tools.
Yeah, and I guess, sort of what you're saying made me think of the fact that, there's this infamous moment in the Hank Pym, Janet Van Dyne relationship where he strikes her, and that obviously sends that character on a very different path. But the lore is that it was a misunderstood direction from writer to artist. And then it's like, well, now we've done this, and now this is who this character is. So I guess you have to be very careful, I guess, when you're trying to convey things. And again, that's something that I've just heard. I don't actually know. I haven't heard either of the creators of that issue talk about that. But that's the sort of thing you hear.
But by the same token, that theoretically, one should never be so late that you can't look at a page and go, "This is wrong," and send it back and say, "Can you fix this?"
That's a great point. Yeah, which I feel like is probably a lot easier to do now because everybody's sending everything in digitally, and
no, it's not, because it's digital. There is a significantly more intense deadline. Significantly more intense deadline pressure. Bear in mind, when Salv and I were doing Extreme, my contractual deal was 2 books a month. His deal was 2 books a month. So, but Salva's fast. He can do a book in 2 weeks. So I send him a plot. 2 weeks later, I have an issue. But I don't have a second series. Neither does he. So I send him another script. I send him another plot. 2 weeks later, I have the issue. I send him another plot. I have the issue. Meanwhile, I'm scripting the issues. So this starts in January. So in June, I get a summons into the editor's office. And Joe Quesada and the publisher are sitting there, and the publisher's furious. It's like, what the are you doing? What do you mean? This book hasn't even been published yet, and I've got 6 finished issues and 9 issues in process. 9 pencils from Salva, and 6 of them are finished. Yeah, we're ahead. You can't do that. Why not? What happens if the book bombs? And I'm saying, it's me and Salva. It's not going to bomb. If it does, well, not my problem. Not but their point, I'm going by old Marvel standards, which is you got to have, ideally by the time you get to publication in September, you have 4 finished issues in the drawer and 9 issues in process. That's not the reality anymore.
Yeah.
But
and that's where the old fill-in issues came in all of a sudden, in the middle of a story that was an ongoing multi-parter. It's like, well, we have to cut away now. And let's think back to something that happened a different time, and we'll get back to the story you really wanted next month.
But it gets even more complicated because when Dave and I were just starting on X-Men, Bill Mantlo was told to do a fill-in. All he knew about the characters was what they had when Len and Dave started working on them. He knew nothing about them. But by the time we were at the end of the publishing year, and Marvel could not afford to keep a full issue in the drawer. So we were told we had to use it. So I ended up rewriting it to fit it accurately into the continuity. But if you have the problem with fill-ins is they go on the books, and sometimes the books have to be balanced, and that means you have to print the issue whether it fits or not.
Yeah.
That's where things get complicated.
Well, and I remember the issue you're talking about when they were doing the reprints with Classic X-Men, they just skipped that one. Yep. Because they're like, well, it doesn't really work. So, nope. And so I was reading these stories for the first time. I'm like, wait a minute, why is this like, I don't remember exactly if it's like 107, like what happened to 106? And then I read it years later. I'm like, oh, that's what happened. It just didn't, it's not even like it was a bad story. It just didn't fit, Yeah.
And then you had another one. You had one that was by, one was a Bill story. The other was one that I'd done for Tony DeZuniga. We had to use that for the same reason, because there was, stuff happens.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's a great point to leave it, except for, of course, Cami Egan saying, I live in Chicago. I would totally send my kid to a specialized school. So that's sort of tidying up why you would send your kid to the school for gifted youngsters, I suppose. But I mean,
no, that's because Kitty grew up in Chicago or outside of it.
Yeah.
And she, bear in mind, she did grow up to become mayor of Chicago and governor of Illinois back in the impossible days when no one ever suspected that anyone from Illinois could, what's the word, become president.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and in a more recent book of, in the more recent Amazing Spider-Man, I know that Wilson Fisk was mayor of New York, and I think that was more saying like, oh no, literally anyone can succeed in politics, without deterring too far into the real world. Sometimes, it's just like, yeah, but you know what about Wilson Fisk? He's good on TV, so.
It made it was an interesting TV series.
Yeah.
Him and Daredevil.
On Daredevil, well, yeah, I mean, Vincent D'Onofrio is fantastic in everything, but if there's ever someone who you hope doesn't yield their part to another actor, I think that would be the one. Sorry, what'd you say?
I still feel he was good. It was fun, and I'm still pissed off they killed Elektra.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think that we didn't really get that much of her. And then when they have her in the Defenders TV series, it was just sort of, I don't know. It just didn't work. Let's put it that way for me anyway. Yeah.
They were binding it to the continuity, which I thought was nice.
Yeah.
We'll see. I really like the Punisher, which I never thought that would happen. So
John Bernthal, the actor for the Netflix series, I thought did a terrific job, but they also really understood the character. It's like, yeah, sure, it's all the guns, but that goes back to what we kept talking about over the last couple hours. The character, Frank Castle is such an interesting person, and
the thing is, he's a real world character in real world conflict.
Yeah,
there's nothing super about him.
It's true.
Him infinitely more accessible to creators in the real world, as opposed to Spider-Man, who's a totally different animal. That's the real thing. He's real world. The trick is finding a way, if you're going to do Wolverine, is finding a way to take Logan and define him for the creators of the film, the actors, the screenwriter, the director, in equivalent terms, so that then he can reach out and embrace the audience the same way, seduce them the same way.
Well, yeah, I agree, and I'm sure that once I say goodbye, I'll think of another couple hours worth of conversation to have. But I look forward to that whenever it happens. What's that?
We'll do it after the new year.
Yes, exactly. And you know, in the new year, that's when you'll be able to find out there the anniversary special, which we showed you some great covers. The Paragon Collection, you had to already get your pre-orders in, but I'll tell everybody about it when I get it. And the X-Men Legends series, and who knows what else 2021 will bring us. But oh, and of course, everyone should follow Chris on Instagram at Chris Claremont, because we'll get to see, you know, the fact that you fought the pothole in the pothole one. We'll get to see some wonderful. You had your Christmas tree on there. You know, when restaurants are open in New York State, you've shown some great things in there. So just, you know, people get to know what you're up to, and then also what you're working on. So it's a great way to stay in touch. And we always appreciate your time here on the show, Chris.
Well, thanks very much. As usual, I've talked and talked and talked.
And I listened and listened.
The lights.
Yeah, I listened and occasionally chirped in. But yeah, they literally shut the lights off. We've closed the place down. It's last call. Thanks again to Chris Claremont. Thanks again to all of you. We'll be back with the show in the new year. We'll be airing on Fridays so that we can react to the new Disney Plus series WandaVision, which we've been looking forward to for quite a while. So you'll find. Yes.
The trailers on that look ridiculously cool.
Yeah, it's insane. Whatever's going on there, it's just like, you know, from the history of television aspect, where she's like walking through what looks like the Brady Bunch house, through like the Donna Reed or Dick Van Dyke house, and then the Roseanne kitchen from the 90s. You know, you're just like, whatever it's going to be, I'm going to be there for every minute of it. And I can't wait for that show, you know? So
I only hope the X characters get as good a chance.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the emphasis, the first, see, I'm talking for another half hour. the buzz at this point is that they seem to be wanting to go back to the original 5, just to start from the beginning.
Yeah.
I kind of hope Rogue does come in to kick ass with Captain Marvel. I hope they get it right.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think that's what the feeling is, you know, that when you are collaborating with Feige and Marvel Studios, you know, I mean, that's why there's an excitement that we're going to get eventually a new FF movie, and they have not been treated well on the big screen so far, but there's optimism for that. And if they do that right, obviously you hope that the X characters will get the same treatment.
Just wish they'd give me a call. I'd tell them.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd be able to get a hold of you. I think you would take their call if they called you.
Well, it takes 2 to make a call, and sadly, I'm not the one that's
right. Exactly.
The firemen are in the street outside. That's interesting. Sorry, flashing lights up window and a big fire engine.
Oh, hey, it's the only light around you right now, since it has gotten so late. Well, thanks again, Chris Claremont, and we'll see everybody in the new year. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see everybody in 2021.
Have a happy Christmas,
Stan Lee,
Happy New Year, and good solstice.
Yes, and as the great Stan Lee would